Welcome to the Amplifier Podcast, the show where the best in business discuss how you can grow your business best. I'm Wyatt McPherson, I produce this show, and this episode, Don Cooper is joined again by the Ambassador of Hope himself, Andre Norman. On his second of 3 episodes in this series, Andre will be with us discussing where racial disparity comes from in America, with a strong focus on his own personal experience in the legal system, in schools, and more. Again, I truly mean it when I say that Andre's story and his mission are some of the most inspiring out there, so do make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss our final episode with Andre. And as always, I truly do hope you enjoy this episode of the Amplifier Podcast.
In the prison system in the United States, 25% of the world is in prison in the United States, but there's also a disproportionate amount of Black young men who are in prison in the United States. Like, what's that all about?
Well, Black people make up about 12% of the country. And if you say it's 50-50 men, women, that makes Black men 60% of the country. And if you say between the ages of 18 and 30 or 35 is half of that, you're talking about 3% of the country. So 3% of the country is 18 to 35. And 3% of the country makes up almost 40% of the prison system. So you got 3% of the country makes up 40% of the prison system, which is probably half of the population in the world. And that's not by accident. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's a system that was originally built during a time when Black people were not really thought of well. You built a system for some people didn't care about, which we understand in the 1700s and the 1800s and early 1900s. Black folks were inferior, we were 3/5 of a man, we were slaves, we were a lot of stuff in the eyes of those who were in charge. So they built laws and policies that govern in that time. As we've moved forward, the mindset hasn't shifted in everybody. And there's a contingent of people who say, well, get rid of them. We wish we could put them on a boat, send them back to Africa. There's some people say, well, we want to keep them. So it's that back and forth. Once there's a group of people who don't like us, there's a group of people who do like us. There are too many people who've been released from prison every year for the last 10 years for DNA and other proof that says they never did it. Just flat out never did it. Too many cases have come across the tables where it just flat out never did it. Guy did 20, 30, 40, 50 years in jail for crimes they didn't commit. And let him out, let him out, let him out. And nobody's saying, well, how did that happen? Well, let's go back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If a white person said you were guilty, you were guilty.
Right. That's
it. That's all you really needed was a white person to say you did it. If it was a cop, if it was a witness, if it was a store clerk, it should be any Black guy would do. And so now we're like getting to the place of reform. How do we fix this? How do we fix this? And then it's compounded again with, okay, well, how do we justify locking Black men up unjustly for the last 40, 50 years? And if we admit it, what are we culpable for as white folks? And so it's to the point now where the system is just built wrong. If I get arrested today and I don't have money to pay bail, I'll sit in jail for 2 or 3 years waiting trial. If you get arrested today and you can pay bail, you walk out tomorrow. And since I can't afford a lawyer, I'm apt to get shafted and the lawyer's gonna tell me take a deal if I did it or not. You might have done it, but if you have a great lawyer, you're going home. OJ case, prime example. Best lawyers money could buy. Had I been OJ, I'd have been guilty in 3 months.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't have even went to trial. You probably would have had some lawyer who said, hey, just take a deal so they don't put you to death or some crazy thing.
Person non-OJ's death row.
Right.
So our system was set up based on race, but it's now running based on money. So I'm not even going to say it's 100% race-based anymore. It's definitely 90% financially based because rich people go home.
Yep.
Rich people go home. And our system of justice shouldn't be predicated on how much money you have. So rich people can commit crimes and go home. If you're connected and commit a crime, you can go home. So if you're a senator and your son does something, you go home. If you're a bus driver and your son does something and you're Black, you go to jail. Our system is set up based on haves and have-nots. And that's what it is. And we've never resolved the race issues between white and black people. So there's always that dynamic of, damn, we still got the slavery thing hanging around that we've never really addressed. We've never really addressed slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, civil rights, busing. We ain't addressed none of it. We've kind of got past it, but we've never addressed. You got black millionaires now. You got black billionaires now. So we're good now, right? But you have a whole generation of people who've been traumatized, and we're not fixing their trauma. Anytime there's a school shooting or 9/11, they rush psychologists in there 100 miles an hour. Nobody's rushing psychologists in to help black people get over the trauma. Don't need 40 acres and a mule. Don't need an apology. We need therapists. If you want to fix it, fix it. We can fix Afghanistan. We can fix China. We can fix Australia. We can get moon rocks. We can't fix trauma in our own country. So somebody has to say, okay, bite the bullet. They're going to call us what they're going to call us, but let's fix it. I want to fix it. I don't want to shame you, scream on you, call you names. I want to legitimately fix it. And that's my goal. My position on racism is if you, as whatever race you are, don't want to like me because I'm black, we'll make it about me. I'm okay with it. I am okay with any person, regardless of their nationality, white, black, Spanish, or Asian, or Indian, deciding they don't want to like me because I'm black. There's black people who don't like me. There's white people, Spanish people, Asian people, Indian people who don't like me because I'm black. I am so okay with that. My only request is, if you want to be a racist, thumbs up. Please stop applying for the police force in urban settings. Please stop applying to be school teachers in the inner cities. Please stop. Don't come work around us. Go out to wherever city where it's 95% white and is 95% Indian or 95% whatever you are. Go be a police officer there. Go be a school teacher there. Hate black folks from the hills or wherever you want to be. Don't come to Compton. Don't come to New York City. Don't come to Atlanta. Don't come to DC and say, I want to be a cop in this city and not like black people. I am so okay with you not liking me. Stop trying to take a job where it puts you in control of if I live or die, if I become educated or not. Go live with who you want to live with. You can't, I don't have the right to tell you, you have to like or love me because of the law. Don't need that. You don't want to like me? Kick rocks. But stop coming in here as a local cop. Because if you know you don't like me, it's going to at some point come into a conflict and, oh, you got a gun and I don't. Or you're the principal and it has to make a decision about my life and you're always going to lean towards the side that you don't like me. So again, I'm cool with racists. Okay with it. I'm just not okay with the racist taking a job that puts him in control over the lives of the people that he doesn't like. We know exactly where the trauma and the angst and the disappointment and the hurt feelings and the anger comes from. 400 years of slavery. Like I said, I'm not arguing slavery. I don't agree. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not going to argue the premise of slavery. What I'm going to argue is the treatment that American slaves received. I believe it was some of the most heinous, unnecessary, barbaric treatment that you could do to other people. And that is what causes the strife and the issues today. It wasn't just that you had slaves. The way that they were treated was just so appalling and unnecessary that it set a standard and a mindset so far out. Now we're trying to get generations to come back into reality. When you started like a black is nothing, I'll cut open a pregnant woman's stomach in a second and I'll sell them off, I'll rape them, I'll kill them, I'll drown them, I'll beat them, I'll whatever, treat them like dogs. That is the treatment of the people. Mm-hmm. The treatment of my people, which created the trauma, which goes back to what we're saying today. There's never been trauma-informed care for that. Mm-hmm. People come back from wars, they get counseling. People come from shooting centers, they get counseling. People after 9/11 get counseling. There's been no holistic counseling for people who've suffered that type of, when I say people, I'm talking about my folks who suffered what is clearly in the books. It's not a did it happen? My question is, when are we going to treat it? Because if you don't treat it, guess what? It just gets worse. And where in America have we sat down and said, okay, we had slavery. It was whatever amount of years ago. Nobody here wants to re-enslave anybody in theory. And so let's talk about treatment for the people who came from that place. If you have a disease and you have a baby, there's a 99% chance your baby's gonna be born with that same disease. Then if that baby has a baby, it's hereditary, it's genetics. Same thing with trauma. If my grandfather was tortured to the point of being stressed out, he's gonna raise my father under that same mindset, who's gonna raise me under the same mindset. So at some point, we're not trying to re and undo. We have to say, when can we bring in treatment to help people get past? And this is on both sides. Mm-hmm. White folks got their version of whatever they're dealing with. Black folks got their version. Let's treat everybody. We need to treat everybody with this counseling of some sort to say, okay, it happened. It was horrendous. Let's treat it. But to treat it is to acknowledge it.
Yep.
So it's like, we don't want to acknowledge it, because if we acknowledge it, they're going to call us racist. They're going to call us devils. They're going to forget what they're going to call you. They're calling you that anyways.
Yeah.
Let's not the next generation call you that.
So you've got this piece where you're helping prisoners better themselves and change their mindset so they can elevate themselves out of this situation. And a disproportionate number of those prisoners happen to be Black young men, right? You want to transform the prison system and the justice system, because it's an injustice system that's tied to money and not really justice and fairness, right? Where you've got all that piece. I've heard you talk before about how do you get to the young kids before they get to the place where you ended up when you were 18. I know we've talked about that in Genius Network a little bit. And what's the formula for changing the path that kids are given when they live in a tough situation? Talk about that for a little bit.
I mean, prisoners come from two places. Prisoners or criminals come from two places. From prison, or they come from elementary school. Only two places they come from. We can right now pull up a graph and say, okay, this many kids in the city of Cleveland are failing the 3rd grade. This many kids are failing the 4th grade, which is an indicator that if you fail the 3rd and 4th grade math and science, you're not going to graduate high school. And so these 1,000 kids who are failing 3rd grade math and science, it's a given fact that they're not, 95% of them are not going to graduate high school because they're not going to catch up. So we just said we have 1,000 kids who 8 years from now will be in the street with no education, no opportunity, no access to make money. I'm going to tell you the rule of the street. It's called you must eat. So I got 1,000 kids out in these streets with no education and no way to make money. So they're going to do it illegally. So you already know to build 1,000 cells. Instead of saying we got 1,000 kids who are en route and we got 8 years to circumvent this, we're not. You fix the American prison system by fixing public schools. You have these same kids who become adult criminals in school at 5, 6, and 7 years old from 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. Every day, 5 days a week. That is the ideal time to teach these young folks how to do and be better. How to actually deal with the circumstances that they're living in, how to deal with the circumstances that they're facing, and how to get over the hump 2, 3, 4 years down the road. You know what I'm saying? Stop pretending like, okay, I'm just going to teach him the ABCs, but he lives in a war zone. I couldn't imagine my son growing up in Chicago right now. I'd be horrified. They have over 730 murders in 1 year. They have over 3,500 people shot, and that's 4,000 people affected by gun violence. What are the odds that my son will be one of those kids? For whatever the reason. So we're not saying, how do we fix that? We spend millions and millions, if not billions of dollars to police them and incarcerate them. At what point do we spend some of the money on preventing? If there's no preventative measures, then all we're going to do is just keep either burying or locking them up. Until what? Till you run out of them? To get to play? At some point, we have to, as forward-thinking adults, say, we have 735 murders in one city, majority Black people. That's a problem. Nobody says it's a problem. You know why? Because the people in charge, hey, that's their problem. It's an American problem. There's no place in the country of America where there's 735 white kids who got gunned down. There's no place in America where there's 6% dropout rates in high schools in the suburbs. This doesn't exist. There's no place in America where 60% of white kids are failing out of any school. Or no city with 4,000 people shot that is all white, but it's acceptable. This reinforces and perpetuates that you don't matter. Mm-hmm. This reinforces and perpetuates, you know something? Y'all can 735 people shot and killed in one city year. Tell me where in America there's been 735 white people shot and killed in a year on a 5-year span. So why is it acceptable? In a country, the smartest, biggest, brightest, toughest country on the planet, cool, we don't have the answer today. But if we can put people on the moon to get rocks, them same people can come to the situation room and say, yo, how do we fix this? How many cabinet meetings were there on stopping deaths in Chicago?
Yeah. None. We're entrepreneurs and we're in an entrepreneurial group and we think about solutions. A lot of the departments that are supposed to be responsible for this, the elected leaders, the bureaucracy of the social services system, the bureaucracy of the education system, it's not necessarily about creating a solution, though, is it? It's there's something else there.
This has easily been since the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010. We're talking about 50 years. 50 years of government can't fix one problem.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the right to go to better schools in the 60s. So for 50 years, we haven't fixed the problem of public schools. But yet still, we have all kinds of advanced technology. I can go on my phone, hit a couple buttons, and have my car pull up out front with coffee in it. We can go this far with technology, but we can't teach little black kids how to read and write. So I get to the point to say, okay, is it negligence or just we don't care? Now, I'm not taking away the responsibility of the parents who have these kids. If you're two parents with kids and you don't know what you're doing, however you got there, I'm not going to dispute that. You are some part culpable. You wanted to have 2, 3, 4 kids and couldn't know how to raise them. I'm not even going to argue that part. What I'm saying is, I'm not going to blame. It's partially their fault, but I'm not going to say they're responsible for fixing their own problem. Yep. That's all I'm saying. If your toilet stopped up and your kids did it, you're still going to call the plumber. You're not going to make the kid fix it. Your kid stuffed the towel down the toilet, stuffed up. Stuffed orange pills down the toilet, it's stuffed up. Kids throw stuff in the toilet when they're babies, it's stuffed up. You call the plumber. You don't make the kid become a plumber. So these parents in these neighborhoods are wrong, whatever you want to call wrong, fine, I'll take that. Let's call the plumber.
Right.
That's all.
I think of the parallel you're talking about when you have these kids who can't read, can't write, can't eat, and then they take to the streets to that's the solution to the problem for them that they can find, right? It's much like what our friend Joe Pollard says, that often addiction is the solution to something else. It seems to me that taken to the streets, joining a gang, getting involved in figuring out a way to survive, and that happens to be on the streets, is the solution to the problem. And they're being penalized for the only solution that they can figure out. And we're not dealing with the root cause issue that can stop them from peddling whatever they have to peddle on the street.
I'll tell you this. If you and your 2 brothers came home from school, your dad passed, and your mom's not there. If you came home from school and there's no food, what you going to do?
You're going to figure it out somehow.
How you going to figure it out? I mean, okay, what's the solutions? What are your options? You come home from school, dad's not coming home, mom's checked out. Where are you going to get food from? You got 2 teenagers and a 9-year-old. You're like, yo, we hungry. Forget about clean clothes. Forget about heat. We hungry. You 3 boys, now I'm going to take you out of Canada and I'm going to put you in Baltimore, where down at the corner, there's people selling drugs. You're not going to start out as a drug dealer. You're going to go down and see the drug dealer like, hey, Bob, my mom checked out. My dad died. Can we get some bucks? And he'll give you $20 for you and your brother to eat. Today he'll give you $20. Tomorrow he'll give you $20. The next, he'll keep giving you money. I'm going to tell you something a guy named Selvin Brown said. Because all the pastors went out and talked to the kids, and they couldn't understand why when the pastors showed up, the good people, why they kept following the drug dealers. And one of the drug dealers told him, when that kid gets off the bus at the afternoon, I'm there to walk him home. When he ain't got no food at night, I give him money to eat. When he has holes in his shoes, I give him new shoes. When his father's beating his mother, we step in. I'm there, you're not, we win, you lose. Period. I don't care how good you are, we're here, you're not, we win, you lose. So if you
that drug dealer is the replacement for my Jesuit priest.
If that drug dealer started giving you money to pay for the stuff and giving you support, you're gonna have an allegiance to him. And at some point, you're gonna go from identifying to collaborating. And whether it's the older brother, I'm gonna get out here with you because you gotta go borrow money every day. Like, yo, bro, I ain't got no problem feeding you, but damn, you old enough to be out here and make some money too. Take this, watch out, do something. Now your older brother's out there. If the older brother's out there, it's automatic before you go out there. But again, the law of you must eat is real. And we have to say to ourselves, at what point do we want to fix the problem?
How does the whole Black Lives Matter movement play into this?
Black Lives Matter movement is now created because throughout time, we've had a lot of movements to save and rectify Black people. Going all the way back, we can go back to different slaves and different Frederick Douglass all the way through. You know what I'm saying? Every Black leader who rose up, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, go down the list, has all been murdered.
Yep.
If you rose up and said you want to lead Black people out of despair and into a better place, you got murdered. Then once flat out murder wasn't accessible, they just started locking people up. So in the 70s, Black Panthers, the Mau Mau's, the COINTELPRO program, they started locking people up. We're just gonna lock you up. We can't murder you, we'll lock you up. You will not lead Black people into another state of mind because we need them oppressed and in that state that they're in. So now here we are in 2020. And every Black person, even though white people might not get this, we know if you try to be a Black leader, you're gonna end up dead. So nobody wants to be the Black leader. Nobody wants to be MLK. Nobody wants to be Malcolm X and dead. So they created this one massive organization that it's an umbrella. If this was the 70s or the 60s, it'd be part of it would be church, part of it would be Muslims, part of it would be Black Panthers, part of it will be back to Africa. It will be 5 separate movements, which will get you what? 5 different dead Black folks. Yep. Band together by necessity, there's no leader. This is technically 8 different movements merged into one.
Right.
So out of necessity of not getting murdered, nobody wants to be the leader. That's why one group says we hate police. One group says we protest peacefully. One group says we protest non-peacefully. One group says we loot. One group says we burn. One group says we march. So it's like to the public is one group, but in reality it's 10 groups merged into one. And it's come like that because where's Malcolm X? Where's Martin Luther King? Where's Medgar Evers? And you just go down the list, all dead. Yeah. Why are they dead? Because they try to lead Black people to another state of mind. I believe for all groups, all countries, all situations, it can be solved, but first there has to be some uncomfortable conversations. And the adults who are so unwilling to have the uncomfortable conversation is the problem. It's not the solution that we can't get to. We can't get through the uncomfortable conversations of, you know something? We did you dirty. Or you know something? We didn't play fair. Or you know something? Yeah, we did throw about 4,000 people in jail unjustly. Or we did hang 8,000 people over the course of taking whatever. You can't go back. You can't fix it. But until we're willing to sit down and have the uncomfortable conversation about what actually happened, we'll never get to a solution. So whether your country, this country, prisons, or whatever it is, there has to be an uncomfortable conversation before you get to a solution. If you want to expand your company, you're gonna have to fire some people. Because there's some people in your company can't go to the next level. If you want to keep those people, you'll never go to the next level. So your VP might not be smart enough for a 20% increase. I'm saying your accountant might not handle money at 100% increase, at 10x increase. So if you want to keep your accountant, you want to keep your VP, then you keep your business at the size it is. So having an uncomfortable conversation, letting go of people that you care for, is a reality in growth. So here we are now with people in history. We have to have an uncomfortable conversation to grow. Mm-hmm. And people are so unwilling to have an uncomfortable conversation for whatever reason. I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want to be called out. I don't want to be made to look like a bad guy. So therefore, we stay stagnant.
Some people don't want to change because they want to. They perceive they want to hang on to what they got, and if they have to change, they might need to let go of some things that they think that they're entitled to for whatever reason.
The people who don't want to change will never make noise, but there's those of us who want change, and we're in the majority. But as long as we want to change, but we don't want to have the conversation. There's some people who don't want to change and don't want the conversation. But there's those of us who wanted to change, but don't want to have the conversation. Those are the people at fault. Those are the people who need to stand up and say, no, something, let's have the uncomfortable conversation so on the other side, we can get a victory. You can't, the only way to get through is to go through.
Thank you everybody so much for listening to this episode of the Amplifier Podcast. If you'd like to learn more or get in touch with either Don or Andre, then you can always do so at any time at the links in the description of this episode. Make sure you leave a 5-star rating, it truly does help us out a lot, and be sure to subscribe and follow so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening again, and we will see you next time on the Amplifier Podcast.